You think Kyrie is going to get anything similar?
No, everybody's good. Everybody's good. KD last year in Oklahoma City. Paul George going to go back to Indiana. You know, D-Wade's going to go to Chicago. Kyrie's coming back to Cleveland now.
But he asked for a trade. That's a little bit different.
They will be fine.
You got to find a friend that can finish your sentences. Yes, BFFs here, even when they're calling you out for being publicly a cheapskate, which is also part of Rachel Nichols' interview, which is really entertaining. Hey, welcome to SI Now. Maggie and Robin, just best friends here with you. The NBA season tips off tonight. We're kicking off the show with one of our favorite segments. It's called Hot Take, Smart Take. Our producer, Ben Teitelbaum, will give us a hot take.
We're the three best friends that anyone can have.
That anyone can have. Ben's going to give us the hot take. We'll also tell you if it's the smart take. Ben, no bias at all, just decided to wear an LA Lakers jersey, even though he knew he was going to be, or jersey, pardon me, t-shirt, even though he knew he was going to be on the show today as I'm readjusting my wardrobe too. Ben, what's your first hot take?
Well, let's stay out of LA and start with the MVP race. No, we're not talking about Lonzo, LeVar. Let's talk about a two-time former winner, Steph Curry. He's 12-1 to win the MVP this year, but hot take, Steph Curry is going to take home his third. Robin, what do you think?
I think that's actually closer to a smart take than a hot take. I mean, the hot take aspect of it is that Kevin Durant's also on his team. So I don't think Steph Curry's going to win for that reason. I think it's more likely to go to a player who is given the lion's share of credit for their team's success individually. But Steph Curry is a great player. Of course. And people seem to have forgot about that a little bit. So if he has that reminder kind of season, because I do think that the Warriors' success is, of course, shared between all those guys, but he's the single most important reason for it, the gravity that he provides as a player. So if Curry has his best year and the Warriors are even more absurdly good than we imagine them to be, he could win the MVP.
Okay, this is a hot take that I could see turning into one of those freezing cold takes if Steph Curry actually wins his third MVP, but I think it is a hot take. It's not inconceivable that a two-time MVP would win another one. I just think he is going to split votes with Kevin Durant, and I think people are going to see Durant as not the more valuable player, but I could see them thinking that Durant is going to put up the better numbers, potentially. I think they could see Durant as being a bigger cog in the wheel than he was even a year ago when he won Finals MVP, and I could see it swaying in his direction for him to get his second MVP award, but his first in Golden State. I think last year with the voting, Russell Westbrook won, James Harden too. It showed that this is really a stats-driven award. You do not have to be the best player on the best team to win this title, because LeBron James says every year, how are we deciding what's the word valuable actually mean? And you have Russell Westbrook, who goes out in the first round of the playoffs, but he wins MVP because he was going after the historical stats season. I don't think that's going to change. I think we're going to start to see that even more. So with that in mind, hot take, Steph Curry wins MVP. I think if Giannis leads the Bucks to 50 wins, they could give it to him. I also think that LeBron James is sitting there at 5-1 odds, Robin. I mean, Kyrie's gone. Jay Crowder, these other guys they brought in are not going to take the shine away from LeBron. He could win another.
I think LeBron will win the MVP.
Really?
I think it will be LeBron's final MVP, and it will be LeBron's final season as the best player in the league before he cedes that title to Steph Curry.
Now that's a smart take. Ben, what's next?
Stay with the Warriors. Hot take, they're going to win 74 games, set a new record. Maggie, is that the smart take?
No, this is just only hot takes. I think that the Warriors have shown us that I don't think they care about the regular season at all. They went for 73, and I understand Steph Curry was resting a lot of those fourth quarters, that amazing season. But they went for it with 73. They end up getting down 3-1 to Oklahoma City in the conference finals. And then, of course, we know what happened when the Cavaliers came back on them when they were up 3-1 in the final. I think that was it for them in terms of regular season awards. They realized even if it's not about the energy, even the mental energy, I don't think they want to expend it. The season is longer, yes, so I'm expecting fewer of those DNP rest situations, or guys maybe will monitor their minutes maybe a little bit less because they have more recovery time, but I just don't see why they would ever go for this.
That's a smart take, Maggie. The problem is the original take isn't a hot one because the Warriors are so unfairly good, where they could maybe win 74 games without trying to win 74 games, and therein lies the problem.
Robin, you have LeBron winning the MVP. But what do you think about this hot take? He's going to miss the finals for the first time since 2010.
I don't think it's that hot a take. I would say it's the smart take if I believed more in Kyrie Irving, because if I look at the overall composition of the Celtics, they have a modern basketball team. They're interchangeable. They've got young guys who could be on the rise and contributing, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, amongst them. The difference is still LeBron. And I would go on this show and say that the Celtics would win the Eastern Conference, but I still think the gap between LeBron and the next best player and on Boston is so large. I don't think Kyrie has proven himself to be that winner as of yet. So LeBron driving to the rim on the Celtics has been a familiar sight. I think we'll keep seeing it.
I want to say that this is a smart take, despite the question marks in Boston with Kyrie and Hayward together losing their defensive identity, at least with Avery Bradley and Jay Crowder and even Olynyk, being traded away. But the talent, the top-notch coach, I think they are going to be right there. We remember a year ago, it seemed like that series was a little bit closer than it actually was. It wasn't. The Cavaliers, beat Boston handily. But one place where I think the Cavaliers could be a little bit susceptible and maybe a little vulnerable is maybe in two ways. Chemistry, which we saw LeBron James and Dwayne Wade laughing it up, and I'm sure that they're going to have a lot of fun this season. But chemistry seems to always be an issue with the Cavs this year. And we're going to find out if Kyrie was really one of the big issues there, or maybe if it is LeBron James who's a big issue when it comes to chemistry. And then if Isaiah Thomas is still working himself back into the lineup at crunch time, like maybe a little closer to the playoffs, maybe I could see Boston picking one off.
I put LeBron and the Patriots in the same category, where eventually they will fall off. But I don't need to be the one who predicts it.
Yeah, right.
Every year, Sports Illustrated solicits anonymous NBA scouts for opinions on teams around the league. Now, this year, one scout said, watch out for the Rockets, but not in a good way, that it might be more difficult for James Harden and Chris Paul to play together than people are predicting. Here's the hot take, Maggie. The Rockets will be worse. They will win fewer regular season games with CP3.
This is so hot. I can barely sit on my chair. This is so hot. I just don't see how someone could come to this conclusion, because the Rockets were a team that won 55 games last year. You're adding Chris Paul at a time in his career where this is really legacy time. This is where he feels like he needs to get as close as humanly possible to actually making it to a finals. I mean, there's so much riding for Chris Paul. I think his greatness, while for many is not debatable, I think for others kind of is, because we live in this sort of, if you don't have a ring, then what were you really worth? And if you were really that great, well, then you'd have a ring. I mean, we see this manifesting itself with the biggest stars in the league. So I think that Chris Paul is going to be the leader of this team. I think that he's going to adapt to this team. I think that this team is good with Ariza and PJ Tucker and Clint Capella. The Western Conference might beat each other up a little bit more this year than last because it got so much better, but I'm not going to say they're going to not win in the neighborhood of 55 games, and I think they are going to be actually a better team.
Yeah, it's an obnoxiously hot take, because Chris Paul is a smart guy, right? And he chose to go to the Rockets. On top of that, we've seen ball-dominant guys. Maybe it's not the perfect fit at first, hence LeBron and Wade, sure, but they figure it out. And what Houston's able to do now is always have either Chris Paul or James Harden on the floor at all times running the point. Plus, Chris Paul can play defense, and Harden doesn't have to worry about that as much. We know that's not his favorite thing. He doesn't have to work as hard. They're a smart organization. You add that much talent to a team, a top 10 player still in Paul, they are necessarily going to get better.
I just don't know if Mike D'Antoni is going to need them to play any defense. He can be like, Chris, play defense if you want. I'm not demanding it.
He is on record saying that their goal is to be the best offensive team ever. What a surprise.
Then what's next?
Well, Robin, obnoxiously hot take. Now I'm the one taking the heat here.
No, it's the anonymous scout, and it's not you and your Lakers.
He won't put his name to it.
It's not you and your Lakers t-shirt on the day we're talking about NBA stuff. No, definitely not you.
We're not going Lakers, not yet.
Okay.
Let's go Pelicans. They might want to tank this year when this Brow and Boogie pairing doesn't quite work, but here's your hot take, Robin. The Pelicans will trade the Brow before they trade Boogie.
Another rather obnoxious hot take. Look, Boogie Cousins is a guy I wouldn't want to build my team around. I do not think Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins will work. You could convince me there's a universe where the Pelicans trade Anthony Davis to try and rebuild their whole organization, but you can't convince me there's a universe where they do that before. they trade DeMarcus Cousins.
Oh, I think we're living in that universe. I think this is actually a smart take because I think the Pelicans are going to be tanking. They have an owner that is 90 years old where his offspring are sort of in this battle over his estate. Things are kind of ugly, I think, in Pelicans if you just pull back the curtain a little bit. And I think they're looking up at all these teams in the Western Conference and thinking, oh no, we don't have a prayer, at least for the next 5 years. Anthony Davis under contract for the next 4, and he's being paid a ton. Not that he's not worth it. The minimum contract he's getting is $23.7 million a year, and it only goes up from there. Before the show, we went on the ESPN trade machine. It took maybe 90 seconds for us to come up with a trade that got approved, and it was something silly. I mean, it was Anthony Davis along with Etuan Moore for Al Horford and Jason Tatum. Who says no? I mean, if you are taking to the Pelicans, I think you obviously say yes, and you try to get Danny Ainge to throw in a draft pick as well.
I say no until he throws in those draft picks.
And he has them in spades. So I think that he would, and I think actually the brow is going to be a lot easier to trade, and then Boogie just walks out the door at the end of this, end of the season because he's a free agent. I know, I almost choked on that. It was such a smart take. All right, Ben, what's next?
Well, let's move away from the hot takes for a second and actually talk about something serious, because yesterday, Gregg Popovich, coach of the Spurs, called up the sports editor of The Nation, Dave Zirin, and he wanted to sound off on Trump. He called the president a soulless coward, Gregg Popovich's words, for lying about how previous presidents have responded to the deaths of soldiers. Would you guys be surprised if Pop, not one of the players, but Gregg Popovich, was the one who knelt during the anthem before a game?
I'll take it. I would not be surprised. I think he might do it. And I think this would be one of the most powerful and profound moments that we would have in terms of where this issue is headed. Because Gregg Popovich, not only is he a fantastic coach, not only is he a leader in the NBA and a voice on this, he is a veteran. He served in the Air Force. And I think that if he took a knee, and it sounds like he would go to such drastic lengths. I think he would, because of how upset he is with how things are being run by this current president, and I think he would have the backing of the whole team. I saw this and was not able to independently identify it and research it, but that the Holtz, people who own the Spurs, are actually Trump supporters, and Gregg Popovich is still going out and saying these things against the president. I think that he feels empowered. I think he feels like he's doing this on behalf of his team, which is a largely international team, and I think this is something that he might do.
Gregg Popovich, I think, would have the support of his team no matter what he does, and NBA fans as well. I don't think he will for a few reasons. One, remember, the kneeling is not a protest of Donald Trump. The kneeling started as a protest of police brutality, racial injustice. So I don't think he wants that message appropriated. I also could see him thinking it'd be a little showy for himself, making himself the center of it. And his message has been so effectively communicated. I mean, his words speak for themselves, right? But every time Gregg Popovich is in front of a microphone, or I guess on a phone in this case, saying what he's saying, we're hearing it. That message is being spread. So I think that's as an effective a means of communication as possible for him.
I get it, but I think what started as a moment has really turned into a movement. And yes, it did start with Colin Kaepernick and others protesting police brutality in minority communities. But I think it has actually spread a little bit more. And I think that's actually not a bad thing. I think it's not a bad thing, especially when you look at how Gregg Popovich has talked out. It just seems like when he's talking about Trump, there just seems like there's such an urgency in his voice. And that's why I think he might do it. It just seems like there's such a reaction he's having that's emotional, but it's intellectual as well. And I think that he would go the next step in doing something like this.
Well, he's certainly not alone, obviously, in the way he's feeling. And I think he's been very articulate in the way he's expressed it. And I think that's the way it's going to continue, because this has been going on since, you know, really the inauguration, perhaps even before that.
And it's also true, we should know Adam Silver did say it is a rule that you should stand for the national anthem. And he said he expects all of the players, coaches included, everyone to stand. All right, Ben, finish us off here.
Finally, tonight, the season tips off. Boston at Cleveland. Does it get any better? The Cavs, curiously, will play a tribute video to Kyrie during tonight's game. Good move or bad move by Cleveland?
I think it's a good move by Cleveland here. Look, Kyrie Irving hit no matter what you say about him, and I'm about to say some stuff about him. No matter what you say about him, he hit a game winner in Game 7 to beat the 73-win Warriors. He was drafted in Cleveland. He played his whole career there up until now. So I think the Cavs are trying to say, hey, we're classy about all this, despite what you've done. And what it does is put an emphasis on the way he's left and kick them on the way out the door. So that, I think, is the right move rather than booing or shunning him. The crowd will speak for itself when they get in there.
This is reverse psychology. We're going to tell you how much we like you, even though we mean that we actually hate you. I don't think that is going to work. This is way too soon. And yes, Kyrie hit one of the biggest shots in Cleveland Cavalier history, but then he asked to leave and he joined the rival. Now, I understand you want to have class as an organization, but can't you be classy in another way? And I'm just wondering, as we're sitting here, where was LeBron James's tribute video on his first game back?
Get so classy?
Where was LeBron James's video on his first game back in Cleveland when he took his talents to South Beach? I don't remember no video, and I don't think there was a video, and I think that this is a totally wrong move. Kyrie's 25 years old. Save all this stuff for down the road. Save it for when it's a Paul Pierce situation and he's about to retire. All right, Ben, nice job, bud.
Thanks, guys. Hoping to play Hot Take, Smart Take with LeVar Ball next time, but you guys will do for now.
I think we'd be overmatched if we play Hot Take, Smart Take.
Hot take.
Hot, medium, hot again. All right, Robin, you thought more about how Kyrie is going to handle the spotlight now that he's the man in Boston.
Kyrie Irving is about to find out what it means to be LeBron James. Well, he'll never actually be LeBron. He's not that good. And no athlete has ever been under the microscope that James has. But this year, Kyrie, more than any individual player, will have the laser beam of scrutiny focused on him. In Cleveland, Kyrie got to take the big shots with no pressure. He only received credit, never blame. When the shot went in, he saved LeBron. When it didn't, LeBron shouldn't have passed it anyway. Now Kyrie is solely in the spotlight. And he's only upped the ante with the cryptic jabs he's thrown at James and the direct ones he's lobbed at his former city and team. Don't get me wrong, Irving is filthy. There may not be a more scintillating scorer in the league, but up until this point, Kyrie has been more of a super role player than superstar. He's never made the playoffs without James, and Cleveland averaged 26 wins per year in his 3 seasons prior to LeBron's return. Since then, the Cavs went 4-13 in games in which Kyrie played without James, and just last year, they were outscored by 120 points in 635 minutes with Irving on the floor and LeBron off it. It's a lot easier to do one thing than elevate an entire team. Overall, the Warriors have the most to lose this season because anything short of a title is an abject failure. But as far as individuals go, no player has more at stake than Kyrie Irving. I definitely don't see a team winning a championship with Irving as its best player, and I'd go as far to say it's likely Kyrie will wind up looking more like a loser than the man in Boston. As much as he claims to be woke, if he and the Celtics underperform, he'll be in for a hell of a wake-up call. As for the rest of you around the flat earth, don't at me.
We're nearing the halfway point of the NFL season. Robin and I have our top 5 power rankings heading into week 7. Robin, you have the Chiefs holding strong at your number 1 spot. The Texans, though, losing J.J. Watt and Whitney Merciless. You still have them in your top 5. Why?
Well, the Chiefs, because they just lost their most recent game. It's not like they were blown out. I'm not throwing out the whole season. As far as the Texans go, the defense has held up nicely. Of course, losing Watt is a big blow. We'll see how it holds up for the rest of the season. But the problem with that team was always the offense. The offense hasn't been a problem as of late, and Deshaun Watson has emerged as an MVP candidate. No player in the NFL is responsible for more touchdowns. So if their defense can be 85% of what it was sans Watt, and their offense jumps up by, exponential levels, I think the Texans are in the mix in a league where we don't know if it's parity or mediocrity. We talked about that before. But in that league, the Texans are in the top 5.
Interesting about Deshaun Watson potentially being an MVP candidate. I'm curious about how the rest of the league is going to approach him in the second half of the season. They always say when you can get film on someone, get tape. Obviously for Ezekiel Elliott, they couldn't really stop him, even though in the second half of the season they had tape on him. But I'm curious with Watson if he's going to have the same effectiveness even when teams know what to expect. As for my top 5, you can take a look. I have the Eagles #1, but the team that I feel like I'm going to have to defend right now is probably the New England Patriots, and the Patriots are definitely making the wrong type of history this season. They've allowed teams to gain at least 300 yards on them in every game this year. That is not good, but I'm still picking the Pats to have home field advantage and make the conference championship because of Brady. And even if something happens to Brady, I feel like Garoppolo could actually step in, and this really has more to do with the rest of the AFC sort of falling, not by the wayside, because I do have the Chiefs as my #2 team, but where are the other contenders here? I mean, Derek Carr has his injury. They have a weak secondary in Oakland. The Steelers, they could be worrisome. I think they're going to get better, but something just seems a little bit off still about Pittsburgh this year. The Texans, you like them. I feel like they lost a lot from the pass rush. The Broncos look very inconsistent. I feel like that leaves the Pats and the Chiefs, and I feel like that will be your conference championship.
Yeah, I had the Patriots in the top 5 as well.
Yeah.
Every instinct says to bump them, but for whom, given their track record? That's the tough part.
I also would not count out a Belichick trade. He doesn't just trade away guys like Jamie Collins. He might be able to bring someone back, too, on the defense. They definitely need linebackers. They need more help there, and I could see him maybe pulling something off.
Meanwhile, if you want to be atop the power rankings of your fantasy league, the waiver wire might be vital. Here's the fantasy exec Corey Parson on who to pick up.
Hey, what's up? It's Corey Parson, the fantasy executive with your SI Now waiver wire report for week #7 of the fantasy football season. Let's start in Big D. With a possible Ezekiel Elliott suspension looming, Dallas Cowboy backup running backs will be hot commodities on the waiver wire this week. Although McFadden has been inactive all season and Morris appears to be the better runner, owners shouldn't look past McFadden because of his pass-catching ability. Both runners should be added, but DMC is the priority. You need wide receiver help? How about Steelers rookie wideout Juju Smith-Schuster? He has been out-snapping disgruntled playmaking wide receiver Martavis Bryant since week 3. With the underperforming Bryant in the doghouse, look for Smith-Schuster's targets to go up as he pushes for the #2 receiver role in Pittsburgh's fantasy-friendly offense. The Giants lack playmakers in the passing game, so in week 6, they turned to running back Orleans Darkwa. Darkwa was still able to give the Broncos rush defense 117 yards on 21 carries. Any back with that kind of workload should be owned in all fantasy leagues moving forward. Every week this season, Patriots running back Dion Lewis has seen an increase in his workload. It's hard to trust New England Patriots running backs in fantasy, but with the pair of cake matchups versus the Falcons and the Chargers coming up, Lewis is now startable in 12-team fantasy leagues. For those of you in deeper leagues that need wide receiver help, the injury to Broncos wideout Emmanuel Sanders could leave an opening for Benny Fowler. Now, Benny Fowler shouldn't be rostered in 10-team leagues, but in deeper leagues, if you need wide receiver help, he should get some looks this week as Emmanuel Sanders recovers from injury. With your SI Now waiver wire report for week #7, I'm Corey Parson, the fantasy executive.
We're taking a look at college football's biggest programs through the eyes of recruiting, and that is why Amy Campbell is here. Let's start with Clemson, obviously. Amy, how is their 2018 recruiting class looking?
Well, they're coming off a national championship, so this is the time to capitalize on that. They're ranked number 16 in the country, but Clemson fans don't need to be concerned. There's only 11 commits in this class right now. They want to sign about 20, so there's a lot of room for them to grow.
Let's talk about some signees and then some targets. Who is already signed up to be a Clemson Tiger?
Well, there are some guys that Clemson should really be excited about, Maggie. The first one is Trevor Lawrence. He's a 5-star quarterback, and with hair like that, you have to be good at football.
Yes.
And this dude is absolutely that. He is an alpha among alphas, can really sling the ball, a quick release, incredibly smart guy, and a guy that other people will follow. Could be the best overall prospect in the country. Another big 5-star to watch for Clemson fans. They've got a defensive end in Xavier Thomas, who is an absolute freak of nature. Another 5-star. He's got that mean streak that you want on the defensive line, but he's a really smart guy, very, very technically sound. A lot for Clemson fans to look forward to with him as well.
Who are they targeting if it's not defensive line and quarterback?
Well, they want to sign a lot of offensive linemen in this class. That's one of the biggest areas of focus. And so they're going after a guy out of Georgia. Jamari Sawyer is one of the top offensive linemen in the nation. He is a mean guy on the offensive line. Again, that mean streak that you're looking for in the trenches. They're fighting the Bulldogs for him, so that's going to be a tough battle to watch down the stretch. Ohio State might get in there as well. You never want to rule out Urban Meyer when it comes to a recruiting battle. So he's definitely one to watch. Another guy, we know Clemson loves those electric playmakers, those wide receivers. They are in it for Justin Ross out of Alabama. It's going to be tough to get him away from Nick Saban. Again, Nick Saban usually has his pick of the litter, and this guy is definitely interested in the Crimson Tide as well as Auburn. But it's going to be tough to get him out of the state. However, one fun fact about him, at the opening camp in Oregon where they get all the big national guys together, he was on a 7-on-7 team with Trevor Lawrence. They've already got that chemistry going, so that's going to be a big help for Clemson with this guy.
But let's widen this thing out a little bit and just talk about philosophy, because in the past, Dabo Swinney hasn't always come up with the #1 recruiting class, yet he's built them into national champions. How?
Well, in the last 5 years, like you said, they've signed only one top 10 class. That does not happen if you want to win. The last 10 national champions, I went back and looked, their 3 signing classes before winning a title, almost all top 10. There's only 2 instances where that did not happen. And so Clemson's doing it their own way. Dabo Swinney, they've got that coaching stability, but he's got his system. He's fitting players right into those molds. If they're not getting those 5 stars, that's okay. They haven't done it before. They're still winning titles. I love to think about what they've done at the wide receiver position, just reloading guys that are basically clones of each other. They lost Mike Williams. They lost Artavis Scott. They've got Deion Kane. They've got Ray McLeod. They just signed a Mike Williams clone in T. Higgins. He's going to be so fun to watch. By the way, I cannot wait for him. And then Amari Rodgers is Artavis Scott 2.0 again. So they are getting it done by being who they are, and it's working for them.
Amy Campbell getting us up to speed on all the latest with recruiting, and happy to be Clemson if you are. They have one of the best classes they've ever had.
Yeah, this could be their best class ever. They've got the room to grow. So it'll be fun to watch to signing day.
Exciting. Amy, thank you.
Thanks, Maggie.
Last fall, the Philadelphia 76ers became the first North American professional sports franchise to own an esports team, Team Dignitas. And in March, it was announced that the franchise had signed its first all-female team comprised of 6 members. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I read that you guys have been playing together since 2014, but you had no sponsors, no really financial support, and you at times stayed in one hotel room together during competitions.
Yeah.
How has that changed since you joined the Sixers?
They provide us with a lot of resources, like, even our own jerseys. We had to make our own jerseys before. Emily was ironing our names on the back because she couldn't afford them. She accidentally ordered crop top jerseys, which we just didn't have the money to order new sizes. So now we have all these fantastic resources that we have available to us. And before we had to do fundraising to go to events. And now whatever tournament we want to go to, we get to travel the world, and Dignitas and the Sixers help us out with that.
And you guys get to train with all their staff and stuff too. You guys did that recently. What does that entail?
Well, the past 2 days, we went to the training complex in Philadelphia. We talked to a sports psychologist. We talked to a sports nutritionist. We did physical therapy. We talked about all the things that we could relate to with NBA players. So, they get knee problems, we get wrist problems because we're playing for hours on end. So we did a couple exercises on how to prevent post-injury. We talked about nutrition because we're on the road a lot and they're on the road a lot. And we talked about quick, healthy snacks that we could eat instead of, going to McDonald's because it's fast and it's international. So that was really nice.
This is really cool. You guys have a great energy. Men and women there's like comparable numbers. They both play, they both game, but studies show that women are less likely to call themselves gamers. How do you change that perception?
I think in the beginning it was just not very cool to be a female playing video games. But I think what we're doing right now is really important. Like we're pioneers pretty much to women in gaming right now. And it's been proven it's already growing. So I think the more and more it gets bigger, the more females will feel comfortable. Oh, I can be a competitive woman in esports. And I think the more that these tournaments happen and things like that, the more women will actually step up and the more it'll be acceptable and okay to be a woman playing video games. And I think people will be comfortable saying that.
I actually used to be what I would call a closet gamer. I've been playing this game since I was
12, so like 14 years, and I didn't tell anybody that I played video games. And now it's just people make it a career. There's colleges that have esports programs, and I'm proud to say that I'm a gamer and I compete in huge tournaments just like a traditional sport athlete.
Do you guys have young girls ask you for your autographs and to sign jerseys and stuff?
Yeah.
Absolutely. There was one girl we met last summer. We were doing an autograph signing, and she came up to us, and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to meet you guys. I've cheered for you. I watch you online. So we had one jersey that day. So we signed the jersey to her, gave it to her. She framed it above her computer, and she used that as motivation. And now she competes in the same tournaments as that. We just found that fascinating. And we love the idea that we're being role models and pioneers, because we didn't have that growing up. We had a lot of strong males supporting us, but we didn't necessarily have any females to look towards. So that's why we're excited that we can be those females.
Mm-hmm. And you guys don't just play with women, you're going to do co-ed too. But is there still, as a whole, a little bit of a stigma of having a woman on your team or playing with a woman?
Yeah, we try not to think about that, though. I think we think that we believe that having that mindset just, puts you back a couple steps. So when we're playing and when we're competing, we don't think about our genders or our opponent's gender. We just want to play, and we just want to be the best. That has been the goal since the start of the team, was to not be the best female team in the world, but generally be the best team in the world.
You guys played recently with Sixers center Joel Embiid, is that right?
Yeah,
it was awesome.
All right, honestly, how were his gaming skills?
I was actually
You were the one
that played against him, and it was funny because we are playing on computers with keyboards and mices. So we played an NBA game against him with the controller, and every time he would score, he would do his little dance, and I was like, all right, wait until we play Counter-Strike against you. So yeah, he was pretty good. He was pretty good.
Even at Counter-Strike?
Actually, we were about to play, and then I was warming up, and then he saw me play, and then he was a
little intimidated by me. He's like, oh, whoa,
I
whoa,
believe so. I don't want to speak for him, but I think he didn't want to play, basically.
What was
Joel,
cool?
come on.
Yeah. What was cool was actually not just Joel Embiid, but Robert Covington and Justin Anderson came out too, and we did this little thing where we paired up in groups, and we had one of the NBA players was at a computer, and two of us were behind one of them coaching them, and they learned really fast. So they were playing against each other, so it was really funny to see them 1v1 each other.
We're cheering for the team we're coaching for. It's actually really fun.
And you guys are all Sixers fans now, I assume?
Definitely, yeah. We want to go to some games.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Robin, how are your gaming skills, besides Tecmo Bowl, which we saw you play with Kyle Brandt?
Not very good, to be honest. The games today have too many buttons.
Yeah, the controller lost me after Super Nintendo, so I bow down to those ladies who are able to hold their own with all the guys. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. But until then, stick with SI.com for all the latest news and headlines. You can follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. See you tomorrow.